We like to think of innovation as modern, born in labs, driven by code, powered by machines. But some of the most world-changing inventions happened long before electricity, factories, even the wheel. Thousands of years ago, ancient civilizations were building machines, performing brain surgery, and tracking time by reading the stars. These breakthroughs weren't strokes of luck. They were deliberate, calculated, and often astonishingly advanced. They weren't surviving in the dark. They were lighting the way forward. So let's travel back, not to myths or legends, but to the real brilliance buried beneath centuries of sand and stone. This isn't a story about primitive tools. It's about ingenuity, by people who understood far more than we often give them credit for. And today on Armchair Archaeology, we're uncovering 10 ancient inventions that didn't just shape their world, they're still shaping ours. Stick around to the end, because one of these may have reached another continent centuries before the first explorers ever set sail. Some you'll recognize, others will surprise you. All of them prove one thing: the ancient world wasn't behind us. In some ways, it was ahead. If this kind of time travel through history sparks your curiosity, hit that subscribe button now. Join the Armchair Archaeology crew so you don't miss the next deep dive into ancient ingenuity. Every great invention begins with a simple idea, but some of humanity's most powerful breakthroughs go back so far, we almost forget they were inventions at all. The earliest stone tools weren't just shards of rock. They were planned, shaped, and used with intent. At Kubifora in Kenya, archaeologists have uncovered hand axes and flaked tools nearly 2 million years old, long before Homo sapiens emerged. These tools weren't made by us, but they helped make us. They're the first visible traces of human thought turned into technology. Fire pushed that thinking even further. At the lakeside site of Gesher Benot Yaakov in modern-day Israel, archaeologists found charred seeds, heated stones, and layered ash, suggesting humans were managing fire as early as 780,000 years ago. Fire didn't just bring warmth or protection, it transformed how we ate. Cooked food unlocked more energy, reduced chewing time, and changed our biology. Many researchers now believe the surplus energy from cooking helped fuel the development of larger, more capable brains. Even more revealing is how fire was treated. Across several early human sites, hearth placements suggest that embers were being preserved and carried between camps. Instead of starting from scratch, early humans may have carefully transported fire, sharing it like a tool. That kind of behavior points to cooperation, planning, and a deep awareness of fire's value. Together, fire and tools weren't just about survival. They were technologies that reshaped how we interacted with the world and with each other. These weren't accidental discoveries. They were strategic choices. And in the glow of those first embers and the sharp edge of stone, we see the roots of every invention that would follow. From fire-wielding foragers to full-scale innovators, humanity's next leap came with the glint of metal. Stone gave us a start, but metal gave us mastery. When ancient people began experimenting with copper, tin, gold, and later iron, they weren't just making stronger tools, they were unlocking entirely new ways to shape the world. Metallurgy wasn't a single leap, it was a slow revolution, and it changed everything from warfare to worship. The first metals used were soft and naturally occurring. Gold for ornament, copper for tools. But when people learned to extract metals from ore and to mix them into stronger alloys like bronze, the impact was immediate. In Mesopotamia, Anatolia, and beyond, bronze tools replaced stone, and metalworking became a specialized craft. Swords, plows, axes, each one made civilization more efficient more complex, and more interconnected. And sometimes, a single artifact tells a much bigger story. High in the Alps, the frozen body of a man, now called Ötzi, was discovered with a copper axe by his side, over 5,000 years old. But the copper didn't come from the Alps. It came from hundreds of kilometers away. That single detail reveals something big. Long-distance trade and idea exchange was already underway. Iron followed. Harder to smelt, but more versatile, it gave rise to vast empires. Hittites, Assyrians, and early dynasties in China, all of them wielding iron to build roads, conquer rivals, and feed growing populations. Unlike bronze, iron was cheaper and more abundant, democratizing access to powerful tools. Metallurgy reshaped daily life, but it also reshaped belief systems. Metal was fireborn, transformative, often seen as divine. Forging wasn't just practical, it was ritual, identity, and control. From ancient forges to modern factories, the legacy is direct. We still build our world with metal, and the blueprint was hammered out thousands of years ago. And if you're into this kind of ancient tech, our new ebook, Secrets of the Ancient World, digs even deeper into lost civilizations, advanced inventions, and historical mysteries. You'll find the link in the pinned comment. Writing is everywhere, on our screens, signs, contracts, and memories. Even thousands of years ago, people understood that writing was power. The moment humans began storing language outside their heads, everything changed. Writing turned memory into infrastructure. The earliest known system is cuneiform, developed in Sumer around 3200 BCE. Originally created for accounting, keeping track of grain, livestock, and trade, it quickly expanded. On clay tablets, pressed with a stylus, scribes recorded laws, poems, astronomical charts, and royal decrees. The clay archive became a kind of external hard drive, one that outlived even the kings it served. In Egypt, hieroglyphs evolved to blend art, religion, and literacy. Carved into temple walls and tombs, they weren't just for record-keeping, they were sacred speech. To read hieroglyphs was to speak the language of the gods. Meanwhile, in the Indus Valley, a still undeciphered script hints at a writing system equally complex, one we may never fully decode. Over time, writing systems grew leaner. Among seafaring merchants, the Phoenicians developed a simplified script based on sounds, not images. That innovation, an alphabet, allowed ideas to travel faster, be learned more easily, and spread more widely. The Greek and Latin alphabets evolved from it, and eventually gave us the letters you're seeing right now. Writing didn't just preserve information, it made administration possible, religion reproducible, and history permanent. It let people coordinate across distances, rule across generations, and tell stories that would outlive them. Today, we write in digital code, but the impulse is ancient: to record, to remember, to be understood. The first person who etched a mark into clay or carved a symbol into stone wasn't just documenting a fact. They were shaping a civilization and making themselves heard across time. Time isn't just a measurement, it's how we organize reality. Today we plan our lives around minutes and months, but that structure has ancient roots. Long before clocks, people watched the sky, turning celestial patterns into calendars that governed planting, praying, and ruling. In Mesopotamia and Egypt, priest astronomers tracked the sun, moon, and stars with surprising precision. Egyptians created a 365-day calendar based on the heliacal rising of Sirius, the star whose reappearance in the dawn sky coincided with the annual flooding of the Nile. Meanwhile, the Babylonians developed base 60 calculations, still visible today in our 60-minute hours and 360-degree circles, to predict lunar phases and planetary movement. Even before writing, people were building monuments in sync with the sky. Stonehenge in Britain and Nabta Playa in Egypt align with solstices, turning stone into a kind of seasonal calendar carved into the earth. But no ancient culture tracked time more intricately than the Maya. They developed multiple calendars, the 260-day Solkin for ritual, the 365-day Hab for agriculture, and the long count for history, spanning thousands of years. The long count worked like a cosmic clock, tracking vast cycles of time far beyond any single human lifespan. Maya scribes didn't just observe eclipses, they calculated them generations in advance, using nothing but naked eye astronomy and stone observatories. Their observatories, aligned with celestial events, allowed them to chart complex cycles with astonishing precision. Calendars did more than count days. They synchronized society, organizing labor, festivals, tax collection, and royal ceremonies. Time became political, spiritual, and deeply cultural. Even today, our calendars still echo ancient logic. Leap years, equinoxes, and zodiac signs all trace back to skywatchers who saw meaning in motion. Their work turned chaos into pattern, and that pattern into power. By mapping the heavens, ancient people weren't just watching stars. They were building systems of control, belief, and identity, systems that still shape how we live, work, and dream today. Civilization doesn't rise where water is abundant, it rises where water can be controlled. Rivers flood, droughts come without warning, and rainfall alone is rarely enough to feed a city. The real genius of early civilizations wasn't just settling near water, it was learning how to bend it to their will. In Mesopotamia, the Sumerians transformed floodplains into farmland with vast networks of canals, dikes, and levees. These weren't improvised systems. They required surveying, labor coordination, and long-term planning. Managing water became a central function of early governments, an ancient version of public infrastructure. Farther east, the cities of the Indus Valley, like Mohenjo-Daro, show evidence of remarkably sophisticated water planning. Public baths, standardized drains, and reservoirs hint at a civic mindset where hygiene and water access were part of the urban design, not afterthoughts. In Egypt, the annual flooding of the Nile was harnessed through basin irrigation, flooding and draining fields at specific times of year. This seasonal rhythm became the foundation of Egyptian agriculture and mythology. But perhaps the most elegant solution came from ancient Persia. The Qanat system, underground channels that tapped distant aquifers, carried cool, clean water for miles without evaporation. Some Qanats are still in use today, thousands of years later. Irrigation wasn't just about food, it was about power. Whoever controlled water controlled the land, the labor, and the rhythm of daily life. Religion followed suit, with gods of rain, fertility, and floods taking center stage. Today, we build dams and pipelines. They built canals and tunnels, but the goal was the same: to tame nature, feed cities, and sustain growth. In mastering water, they mastered survival and laid the groundwork for the rise of every great civilization. These systems didn't just support ancient life, they shaped it. And they remind us that water, managed wisely, is the first technology that turns land into civilization. Which of these ancient breakthroughs has surprised you the most so far? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear what's blowing your mind. We think of architecture as a modern science. CAD software, steel beams, earthquake modeling. But thousands of years ago, ancient engineers were solving complex structural problems with remarkable precision, often without written plans or advanced tools. And in many cases, their creations have outlasted ours. Roman engineers revolutionized construction with concrete made from volcanic ash, lime, and seawater. This wasn't just functional, it was chemical innovation. Roman harbors like the one at Caesarea still survive today because their concrete gets stronger over time. Compare that to modern concrete, which often begins crumbling within a few decades. In the Andes, the Inca built structures without mortar, just stones carved so precisely they clicked into place like puzzle pieces. These walls weren't rigid. They could flex during earthquakes, absorbing shock and settling back into place. In an earthquake-prone region, their dry stone technique wasn't just efficient, it was survival architecture. In Egypt, 100-ton stone blocks were hauled and aligned with celestial precision. At Angkor Wat in Cambodia, temples used hydraulic systems, blending engineering with ritual and the rhythms of the seasons. And at Petra, entire buildings were carved into cliffs, an architectural feat as much as it was a statement of identity. These weren't just shelters or monuments. They were political tools, religious platforms, and cultural declarations. Buildings spoke of power, permanence, and belief. Today, our skylines may rise higher, but many modern buildings need maintenance within decades. Ancient structures were built not just to stand, but to endure. And the fact that they're still with us, weathered but standing, is a testament to the minds that made them. Ancient engineering wasn't primitive. It was adaptive, ambitious, and in some cases, more durable than anything we build today. Want to take this exploration further? Our ebook, Secrets of the Ancient World, is packed with stories like these, from forgotten cities to ancient science that still puzzles experts today. It's like having your own time machine, ready to open anytime you like. Check the pinned comment for the link. The wheel feels like the most obvious invention in history. It's everywhere, in our cars, machines, watches, even the language we use to describe progress. But its origins are far more surprising and far less linear than most people realize. The earliest known wheels date to around 3500 BCE in Mesopotamia, but they weren't attached to carts or wagons. They were potter's wheels, horizontal platforms that spun clay evenly for shaping vessels. In fact, for several centuries, the wheel's primary function wasn't movement, it was craftsmanship. The leap from turning clay to moving carts took time. Early transportation wheels had to solve complex problems, how to balance weight, attach axles, and build road-worthy frames. When these challenges were finally met, the transformation was enormous. Wheeled transport allowed heavier loads, longer journeys, and faster expansion of trade routes and communication networks. The spread of the wheel wasn't universal. In Mesoamerica, wheeled toys have been found, small figurines on 4 wheels, but the wheel was never applied to transport. Why? Likely a mix of terrain, lack of draft animals, and cultural focus. It's a reminder that invention isn't just about discovery. It's about fit, whether a society needs it, can support it, or sees value in it. And yet, the simplicity of the wheel hides its brilliance. It embodies rotation, leverage, and continuity, principles still foundational in modern engineering. From turbines and gears to steering columns and trains, the ancient logic of the wheel still drives the modern world. Its path was not instant, but once it began rolling, it never really stopped. The wheel may look like a basic shape, but it's one of the most profound innovations in human history. It taught us to harness motion, and that changed everything. And it didn't just carry goods, it carried ideas. Before satellites, maps, or magnetic compasses, ancient sailors were reading the world with their senses. They navigated using the sky, the sea, and memory, turning nature into an instrument panel. To cross oceans without getting lost wasn't luck. It was knowledge, layered, tested, and passed down with extraordinary care. In ancient Egypt, boats were essential to life. The Nile wasn't just a river, it was a highway. As early as 3000 BCE, Egyptians were building large wooden vessels with sails, capable of navigating into the Red Sea. Their expeditions to a distant land called Punt, rich in gold, incense, and exotic animals, show that ancient mariners were already extending their reach beyond familiar shores. In the Pacific, Polynesian navigators were doing something even more astonishing. With no written language and no metal tools, they traveled thousands of miles in double-hulled canoes. Their navigation system, known as wayfinding, used star paths, ocean swells, wind directions, and bird movements. This wasn't folklore. It was a complex science encoded in chants and rituals, memorized across generations. Evidence suggests these navigators may have traveled farther than we once thought. Similarities in tools, crops, and oral histories hint at possible contact between Pacific Islanders and the Americas. The idea remains debated, but it's no longer dismissed. Navigation in the ancient world wasn't just about movement, it was about mastery of the environment. Reading the sea, remembering its rhythms, and trusting collective knowledge turned water from a barrier into a bridge. Today, we rely on digital GPS, but the core challenge remains the same: how to find your place in a world without borders. Ancient navigators solved that with nothing more than sky, sea, and story. And in doing so, they connected continents, sometimes even before history knew it. If you're enjoying this voyage through ancient ingenuity and want to support the channel directly, consider hitting that super thanks button. Every contribution helps us keep the stories flowing. Ancient medicine is often portrayed as mystical or misguided. But when you look closely at the evidence, a different picture emerges, one of observation, experimentation, and surprising precision. Long before modern hospitals, ancient healers were diagnosing trauma, setting bones, and performing surgery with tools and techniques rooted in experience, not myth. In prehistoric Europe, skulls with carefully drilled holes, evidence of trepanation, reveal patients who survived the procedure, as shown by bone regrowth. These weren't random or ritualistic wounds. They were deliberate interventions, likely to relieve pressure from head injuries. The survival rate suggests both skill and knowledge of anatomy. In ancient Egypt, the Edwin Smith papyrus, dating to around 1600 BCE, reads less like a spellbook and more like an early medical textbook. It describes 48 cases, including spinal injuries and compound fractures, with logical diagnoses and practical treatments. There's even a clear separation between treatable and untreatable wounds, an early understanding of triage. In India, the physician Sushruta wrote detailed surgical manuals centuries before Hippocrates. He described procedures like cataract removal, cauterization, and even skin grafts. His texts outlined over 300 surgical instruments and catalogued hundreds of medicinal plants, systematic, repeatable, and meant to be taught. These weren't lucky guesses. They were part of living medical systems, tested, taught, and improved over generations. Modern medicine may have refined the methods, but the mindset, the urge to study the body, relieve pain, and extend life, was already thriving in the ancient world. When we read their scrolls or examine their instruments, we're not peering into superstition. We're seeing the origins of science and the first chapters in humanity's long quest to understand, repair, and preserve the human body. Some ancient inventions resist easy explanation, not because they're magical, but because they challenge what we think ancient people were capable of. These artifacts aren't proof of forgotten super science, but they do show that the ancient world was often more inventive and more precise than we assume. One such object was pulled from a Roman-era shipwreck off the coast of Greece, the Antikythera mechanism. Built around the 2nd century BCE, this device used bronze gears to track lunar phases, planetary motion, and eclipses. It even modeled the irregularities in the moon's orbit. Nothing like it appears again for over 1,000 years. Not a mystery of origin, but a mystery of continuity. In Iraq, small ceramic jars dating to the Parthian period may have served as rudimentary batteries. Each one contains a copper cylinder and an iron rod with traces of acid. Some believe they were used for electroplating metals. Others suggest a ritual function. Either way, they point to experiments in chemistry we didn't expect to find in that time or place. Then there are the Nazca lines in Peru, massive geoglyphs etched into the desert floor, animals, geometric forms, and mile-long straight paths, only truly visible from the air. Their scale and precision still puzzle researchers. Some believe they marked ritual processions or astronomical events. Others see them as maps of myth. But they were clearly deliberate, organized, and executed with consistent design. These inventions aren't anomalies. They're signals, clues that the boundaries of ancient knowledge were often wider than our textbooks suggest. They remind us that the past was often smarter than we imagine. Sometimes, the greatest limitation isn't what ancient people knew, it's how modern people interpret it. We often imagine the past as a slow climb toward the present, as if progress only began with industry, electricity, or the scientific method. But the truth is, many of the tools that shape our world today were sparked in the minds of ancient people who had none of those things. No satellites, no machines, just ingenuity. What we've seen across these 10 inventions is not a world of survival, but a world of strategy, experimentation, and vision. These were people who planned for seasons, built machines from memory, read the stars with precision, and reshaped environments with collective knowledge. They weren't behind, they were building the foundations we now take for granted. And as promised, here's the fun fact that still stuns archaeologists. On the coast of Chile, chicken bones were found with DNA that matches Polynesian breeds, not European or local ones. Chickens don't swim across oceans. The likeliest explanation? Polynesian navigators made it to South America centuries before Columbus, carrying not just birds, but knowledge and culture across thousands of miles of open water. It's not just a great story, it's a reminder. History is full of moments like this, quietly buried, waiting to be reinterpreted. Moments that show how connected the ancient world may have been, and how modern assumptions can underestimate ancient ability. Because real breakthroughs weren't always born in labs. They often began on mountaintops, riverbanks, and open seas, shaped by minds that thought far ahead. And if you're ready to keep exploring these mysteries, Secrets of the Ancient World is your perfect next step. Grab it in the pinned comment and keep the journey going. Thank you for exploring the ingenuity of the ancient world with us. If you enjoyed this journey through time, support Armchair Archaeology by giving this video a thumbs up and subscribing for more fascinating stories. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next. Which ancient civilization or invention should we uncover next? Let us know in the comments. And until then, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep the flame of curiosity burning bright.